Now it's time to welcome our next guest, Rick Drew, Sales Director for a retirement community called the Covenant Village of Florida. Rick has been in the senior living industry for the past 8 years. He also has a unique background as both a published author and as a retired law enforcement investigator and enforcement bureau commander. Thanks for joining us today here, Rick, on the Income Generation.
Thank you.
And you're very welcome. Because you're on television, you do realize that you do not have the right to remain silent. But yes, anything you say will be held against you by our viewers. Is that fair enough?
I do have a card for you.
Now they've read your rights. Is that good?
Yes, sir. It's fine.
So, first of all, why do you think seniors and older folks in general tend to be a common target for so many scams and things like that? Why in your law enforcement experience have you found that to be true?
I think it's got a lot to do with the fact that the predators out there are looking for isolated victims. An isolated victim, and if you look at the animal kingdom, the cheetah is looking for a weak link in the herd. Mm-hmm. And that senior out there all alone is vulnerable, and they don't have any isolation or any insulation to protect them against these predators that are out there looking to do them harm.
Do you think any of it has to do with perhaps concern about diminishing cognitive abilities, maybe a little bit less of ability to make to recognize when there's a scam at hand, anything like that, or do you think it's mostly the isolation factor?
I think isolation plays the biggest part. The other things and issues related to Alzheimer's and dementia is going to be something a little different, but being alone, being vulnerable, being out there, that's what the predator's looking for.
So what can our income generation members, some of our older income generation members, do to protect themselves if they feel as though they're part of a scam of some type? What do you recommend?
Well, number one, if you are a senior, there's something you really have to focus on. And that if you go back years ago, there was a movie out with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it was called Kindergarten Cop. And they were talking about stranger danger. And they were teaching the kids, if you saw somebody that you didn't know, or reach out and say stranger danger. If you're on the phone when someone calls you, you don't know them, just say no. There are going to be a lot of sophisticated scams out there that's going to be attacking and targeting seniors. The most important thing for us to remember is we never give out our personal information, our social security numbers. We don't give out our checking account or our debit card numbers, and we just say no. If they're pressuring you to do something right now, they're not legitimate. Hang up on them. Call the police department, get a hold of a family member, and let them know what's going on.
And if somebody calls and says they're from the IRS,
you know that's not true.
You know that's definitely not true. The IRS doesn't call. They simply send annoying letters. That's right.
Letters, that's
the
true.
nastygram. That's correct. So now, what if our income generation member is just a family member, a loved one, who suspects that one of their loved ones who's a senior, maybe their mom or dad or even older brother or sister, is a victim of a scam and maybe afraid to come forward? What do you recommend that friend or family member do?
You're going to have to do two things. Number one, you're going to have to get involved with law enforcement. If there's a scam going on and your parent or a loved one is vulnerable to that and they've been victimized and you think they have, they're not the only person that has been. These scam artists are out there working against a lot of folks, so you need to notify local law enforcement. There's probably a task force or something already working on that particular scam. And number two, the banking institution has to be notified immediately in the event there has been some vulnerability to your banking account.
So in other words, don't be embarrassed to come forward. You're not the only one.
Nope.
There's other people. It's almost like a lot of rape victims sometimes are embarrassed to come forward. It's kind of the same thing here. Don't be embarrassed. You're not the only one, and maybe you could prevent others from being victimized as you were. Is
Absolutely.
that generally good advice?
That's very good advice.
20 seconds or less. Are people safer or at more risk if they live in a retirement community, in your opinion, to scams?
There is insulation built around us in a retirement community, and that's going to provide you protection. You're not going to be that lone creature out there that's waiting for the predator to attack you.
You're not the one that fell back from the herd.
You're safer, much safer.
Got it. Good analogy, too. I love that. Stay with us. We want you back for another segment. You stay with us, too. We have more here on the Income Generation right after the commercial break. I'm here with Rick Drew. You're watching the Income Generation, and I'm David Scranton. We'll be right back. Now it's time to welcome back Rick Drew, Sales Director for Covenant Village of Florida, a senior living facility. Rick, thanks so much for sticking around.
You're very welcome.
So with your experience in retirement communities, your experience as a law enforcement officer, but it's interesting, I know you also do some teaching right now, some education workshops, if you will, things about Alzheimer's and dementia. So two of them specifically The evolution of retirement and the art of aging well. Tell our viewers about what those encompass, please.
Well, there's a problem right now in our society in that we're living longer. And it shouldn't be a problem. You know, back in the 60s, the average life expectancy for a female was 60, 65, 67. Today we're living to be 80 and 85, and we're more susceptible to these age-related diseases. In the 60s, you never heard of dementia or Alzheimer's or even COPT. They weren't existent. Now they're out there, they're plaguing us, and they're very expensive, and if we don't have plans for all of them, it's going to devastate our finances and our families.
So what tips do you have for income generation members who might be concerned about some of these mental health issues down the road?
Don't pretend like it's not going to happen. 1 in 3 people are going to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia. It's a very, very bad disease for us to be concerned about. If you don't have a plan, it can devastate you, your family, and your family's finances. Have a medical surrogate, get someone as your POA, and don't be afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, once again, don't be afraid to come forward. I love it. That's all your years as a law enforcement officer. Yep. You know that to be true. Last question, perhaps the most important, the most relevant to what you're doing currently is, how does one choose the retirement facility or assisted care facility that's right for them, that's best for them?
Well, you have 3 or 4 different things you're looking at. There are skilled nursing facilities. There is a website that Medicare has out there where they actually go in and rate these medical facilities or these skilled nursing communities. If you're looking for something, you're actually going to the place, do the sniff test first when you walk in. If it doesn't smell right, it's probably not. It's not clean the way it should be. If you're looking for assisted living, David, you want a place that you're going to get the activities that you'd like for your loved one to have. But most importantly, don't confuse assisted living with independent living. A lot of children would say, Mom, slow down now, she needs to go to assisted living. But really what she needs is a boost and move into a community that's vibrant. Right. Like Covenant Village of Florida, we just have a lot of activities to keep people healthy. She needs that social interaction, and that's great. So Rick, thanks so much for being on the show today. You're very welcome. You've been a great help. Thank you. And you stay with us. We'll be right back here on The Income Generation. I'm David Scranton. We'll be back in a moment.